Good evening, viewers. Welcome to yet another episode of the Tower at UNN. My name is Dr. Juko, your host and presenter of this show. I just welcome your viewers for a long day and a long week. And here we are in a new month of August. I wish everyone a happy and a best month of August. As you always know, that we're always here trying to discuss training issues that have prevailed within the week. And here we are today. We are trying to diagnose some issues that we need to know as citizens. This show, as we mentioned earlier, that we always discuss issues and to get our viewers understand their rights as citizens, create awareness and interpreting the training issues in our country. And this week is a different week where we shall discuss policies. And with me tonight in the studio, I have very many guests from different circles of life. And I have Mr. Sunday Protasio, who is an associate of the Chartered Insurance Institute of UK. He holds a master's degree in economic planning and policy, and he is now pursuing a doctorate at the Institute of Management. How is it called? Institute of Management, and also he is the
Uganda
director of
Management
planning. He's the director of planning and research at Insurance Regulatory Authority of Uganda. Welcome to this show, Mr. Sunday. Can you greet our viewers, Mr. Sunday?
Thank you, Dr. Juko, and greetings to our viewers.
It's a pleasure having you on this platform.
Thank you very much, Dr. Juko. I'm very happy to be here. This is my first time on this station.
Right.
Sure. And I would like to greet our dear viewers. Greetings
from all over the world,
the city of Uganda.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sunday. It's a pleasure having you here. I have also another Mr. Lawrence Semugoma, who is also on this show. Mr. Semugoma is in Massachusetts. He's an IT expert, but in the health sector. So he has a lot that he can give us in the health sector. Welcome to the show, Mr. Semugoma Lawrence. Can you greet our viewers, Mr. Semugoma?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Juko. I am indeed honored to be on your show to add my voice to everyone's voice, to bring all these issues and ideas to the wider community out there. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. And again, with me, I have Dr. Serubanja, as usual, Joel Serubanja, who is a medical doctor who is so much in the viral dimension of the diseases in Uganda. And he has been always in us. I think this is the third time, Dr. Joel, trying to come and analyze issues that trend in Uganda, especially when it comes to diseases and the healthy care sector. Great to have you here in the studios, Dr. Serubanja.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Juko, for yet another opportunity. I'm very glad to be here with our audience, and I hope that we do these topics justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. And last but not the least is Desire, the analyst. As usual, she's our common person here in the studios on Sunday at the Tower. Greetings from all the viewers, Desire, and I wish you would also greet them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Juko. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching with us and here with us today. Always a pleasure. And as everyone said, we can't wait to discuss these issues and have a wider discussion. And I hope everyone's keeping safe.
That's great. That is great, Desire. Desire, we have a very serious topic today, which is talking about the rapport between the insurance sector and the health sector. Will trying to get sense out of whether the rapport can help us establish the best health care in Uganda. Before we go to that very topic, I'll give each of you at least 5 minutes to analyze some of the training issues. We cannot go away with looking at some of the training issues in Uganda. And I will start with Desire to make the ball rolling by going us through some of the important issues that have trended in Uganda.
Okay, in that accord, we can start with what was trending, which was the releasing of S4 students' exams, the O levels. The results came out, but regardless of, we find ourselves in very ceremonial places whereby even the illegitimate first wife wanted to come out and read these results. But then the question is, what has happened to most of the students who haven't even gotten to see the cross line is one of the questions that we find ourselves, for me, when I was looking at this situation. And another question is, where now is the future of most of these students who have finished the S4? Because this is the future of Uganda. And I read recently an article about vocational schools opening up more and giving places to students. And then I asked, what's the future of a Ugandan who doesn't have access to a lot of resources going to look like in Uganda and the education system that it is as of right now? So firstly, I want to start with congratulating everyone that got to see the finish line. And secondly, I don't want us to forget that early marriages and early pregnancies led to a huge drop rate of how many students could have actually finished with their O levels. And this is going to shape our country. We're looking at a timestamp whereby everything that's happening is going to shape what Uganda will be or what Uganda can look like in the next 50 years. So that's what I have to say about the results. Congratulations, but let's not forget how many roadblocks have been put in place for students to even have access to and complete O-level examinations within the atmosphere of COVID, in a dictatorship environment, and how does even that atmosphere almost sterile a future and make a future inexistent? Because where would the students go now after O levels? What avenues are open? We still have university students still waiting to go back to school and start their years. So that's what I have to say about the students who finished, whose results came out.
Mm.
And then if I can move into the next topic, and one of the big topics that trended this week, of course, the celebration for the 28th coronation of our King Kabaka Mwenda Mutebi. This is history in the making. We're looking at the King came out. So first, I want to start with "Long Live the King." We're living in an era whereby our identity is all we have left within all these other systems that we find ourselves in, because of how history has progressed. We're looking at a point in time whereby, and this is almost true for all Africans in the world, where we might have to sacrifice the last thing that we have and that would be sacrificed to lead to our destruction is our identity. So I have to start by saying, long live the King, because those identity points of who we are, where we come from, why we are the way that we are, ties us back to not only a blood lineage, but land. So long live the King. And he came out and talked about a lot of important pressing issues that had to be talked about. And that includes policies on land, the total restoration of kingdoms, which has not been actually done by the government in power. The fact that we're all in captivity and we've all been kidnapped by this government in power. So a total declaration and clarity that this regime is not what it points out its picture to be. This is not business as usual governance. We are all under military domination, be it based off of our identities, where we come from, or be it just being Ugandans, or be it just living in Uganda and outside Uganda. So I'm really grateful, thankful that the king could come out and talk to his citizens. And I'm grateful that we're seeing this unfold and that the message that was sent out, and now we just wait for that message to reverberate in the masses. And then if I could move on to the next and the last one. No, this is the second last one. So the lift that has happened to the lockdown, but the question is, now there has been a lift in the restrictions that were set by the dictator himself during the lockdown. But where's the compensation? Where the lift doesn't change anything. We have a lot of traders. We have a lot of people, especially labor workers, who have lost so much during the lockdown. How are we going to see this effect play out over time would be a question that I pose to people. How are we going to see businesses work back to at least functionality? These are also all questions that still, it's as though the government came, made the situation worse, and left. So that's another thing that I see happening, is a lot of government meddling forcefully and leaving it up to the citizens to suffer. So the question would be, what actually is being put in place to compensate? Anyway, then when you ask that question, you have to ask also the question, what was put in place to help these people in the first place, so we don't expect much from this government. And then lastly, but not least, I think those are some of the main events that have happened. And I think lastly but not least, another main event that has been trending, I don't think it's, I think that those are the main events that have been trending.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Desire. Thank you very much for that kind of introduction and the overview of what has really trended. Can I have in, let me have in Dr. Serwanja. Dr. Serwanja, you being in Uganda, would you also share with us some of the things that have trended in Uganda?
So, definitely, I would like to talk more about the health sector. We had lifting of the lockdown, easing of the lockdown, and this has been because we've seen a drop in the new cases, a drop in the spread of COVID within the country. This week, mostly, we've been diagnosing about 200 to 300 new cases per day, compared to the time when the lockdown was instituted. That time we used to have more than 1,000 cases. So with the drop in the spread of COVID within the country to about 7%, the lockdown was eased. But I would like to tell our viewers that the easing of the lockdown wasn't because there is no more COVID in the country, but it's because we were having economic suffocation. We're having a lot of economic challenges, and we could not continue to have a lockdown in the country. But I would like to tell our viewers that we have to continue to follow the SOPs, to put on face masks, to distance ourselves, to seek healthcare, proper healthcare advice and proper healthcare from professionals like myself and other doctors out there in the communities. So that is one of the biggest issues. Definitely, we're still having schools closed. We're waiting for vaccines to come into the country. We had announcements in the health section of new vaccines from AstraZeneca, about 260,000 vaccines coming to help to increase the number of Ugandans who are vaccinated. We have the Chinese We have the Chinese people, we had the Chinese government give us some vaccines also to help bridge the gap. So we hope that we're going to have vaccination ongoing very soon. But we still have the challenges because the vaccines are not more than 500,000, and yet the population is very big, because we know right now COVID is affecting more than the essential workers, it's affecting everybody. So basically, my voice wanted to go to the issues of health. We need to continue to observe the measures that we've been observing that have brought down the spread of COVID within the country. Thank you, Dr. Juko.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Uh, Let me bring in Mr. Sunday. Mr. Sunday, can you give us an overview of what has trended within Uganda, particularly you being in Uganda right now?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Juko. I will speak to two issues. One, of course, is the partial lifting of the lockdown, and the other one, the S4 results.
Right.
Indeed, like my colleague has just submitted, people were tired. I happen to be one of the essential workers who go to town every day, but I could see people being arrested, including people who are walking. People were tired. People would risk driving their cars even when they were not cleared. That shows you how hard the situation had become. I managed to go downtown in Ichikubo. The shop attendants would stand outside, and when they would see a person moving, they would run and say, "What do you want? We can serve you." So I think in as much as government has been criticized for lifting the lockdown, even before adequate vaccination has taken place, I think the government was caught up between a rock and a hard place. And in the circumstances, I think people were about to burst. And if I had been in position of authority, probably I wouldn't have had a different alternative other than opening up. But probably now what we have to look at from the policy point of view is to fast track vaccination, because not any amount of lockdown will resolve this problem. People will always find ways of moving, even with the very strict measures put in place. So government has to fast track. We have to mobilize resources and make sure that Ugandans are vaccinated, because we've seen it happening elsewhere. The world is opening elsewhere because they have vaccinated. To me, a lockdown is an equivalent. It's like putting our heads in the sand, or hiding from an enemy, and you peep and you don't see the enemy. You come out and yet the enemy is somewhere in the corner. The long-lasting solution lies in having adequate vaccination of the Ugandan population. Good enough, I think we have overcome the fear of vaccines. When the talk of vaccination had just begun, there were a lot of negative talk about it. But where we have reached now, I think we have overcome that fear, and Ugandans seem to be ready. And actually, they are eager, they are yearning to receive the vaccination so that they can continue with the new normal. That is what I have to say on the issue of partial lockdown. It's true that people are still sick. And I think the statistics, to me, do not say much. They may not be reflecting the actual picture. The statistics that Doctor has mentioned. Yes, those are the statistics with those who are in authority. But again, I was wondering the fact that people were not moving. People were testing. So maybe we give it a week or two and we assess the situation again with this opening up. Probably the trend may change as more people get on the streets. So again, ensuring that we fast track vaccines will give us more comfort to move as a country. The issue of S4 results, Doctor, if you may allow me, the S4 results, I think, yes, I want to congratulate those ones who finished well, and indeed amidst very, very difficult circumstances. But now there is a question of what next. And I think the ministry has not yet helped us very well. They have not come up with a roadmap on what is going to happen next. So these children are living in a state of hopelessness. The future does not seem to be clear. And I think the ministry and those concerned need to come out and give us proper way forward. Of course, based on some assumptions, working with other government institutions and agencies.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sunday. It's a pleasure that you have given a very good overview. And let me bring in finally Mr. Lawrence Semgoma to come up and give a view of how the week has trended as we try to reach nearer to where we are going to spend a lot of our time today. Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Juko and fellow guests. Perhaps what I should dwell on most is the 28th anniversary of the Kabaka's coronation. And I'll also dwell a little bit into the lifting of the lockdown in Uganda, apparently. I was surprised to see people come out in very big numbers to congratulate the king upon his 28th coronation anniversary. It was indeed quite so much joy to see people come up and wave and get into all this jubilation kind of mood after, you know, a 42-day lockdown, and parade themselves on the street, do all sorts of tricks, and express whatever joy they have for their king, or at least the man they know has some influence and holds some power. At least they believe he does. But again, on the flip side, again, getting into why we were in the first place in a lockdown, it's purely because we had coronavirus cases rise in Uganda, and the government saw it fit to actually put us into another lockdown, or rather put people into another lockdown, such that they can try to combat the virus, since we don't have enough vaccines. Well, if I may share some little perspective with what we have currently here in the US, and I would just go specific to the state of Massachusetts where I live. We have at least 4.3 million people in the state of Massachusetts, which represents about 63% of the population here that are fully vaccinated. So the assumption is, if the vaccine really works, at least 63% of the people are fully protected to an extent. But again, there's science that shows that, again, people get reinfected. But at least with the vaccine, administered to that kind of scale, we can start to celebrate that at least we shall be able to save a good number of people. But looking even at another kind of interesting statistic is like we've had at least 72% of the people here receive at least one shot of the vaccine. That is about 4.9 million. I mean, yes, 4.9 million people here, which is quite a good number to look at, or rather to appreciate the level at which this vaccination program has gone into being taken serious, and people getting involved into it since it's available in all these other places. Now, going back to Uganda, it's a little unfortunate that we don't have as many vaccines to give our people. So we are left to just stay on the prevention side. We just need to prevent rather than, try to treat, because we don't have the vaccine. So the SOPs that were given, I think some of them were a little overstretched, but we can agree that at least if you followed most of them, if not all, you would be fairly protected from this vaccine. We wouldn't like to lose you. Even if you have over 99% chances of surviving the vaccine, still it doesn't hurt to take a little more of these precautions such that you can stay safe. Getting back here, with the vaccinations being taken up in such high numbers, the state has actually opened up. In our workplaces, people are, now open full, 100%. And if you're vaccinated, you can actually move around without a mask, which is returning to the normal. And now it's not just the new normal, which requires you to have a mask on when you're, in a public place, more so an office. And I work in a very busy organization. There are thousands of people who get in and out. There are over 1,000 people. Building is, yes, it is big, but yes, those are quite a number of people. If the vaccine was to get there, it would really have its fun for the day. But with the vaccines taken up in such huge, rather to such an extent, like we are at 72%, people are now comfortable moving around without masks. And of course, eventually the goal is to have everyone vaccinated in the near future. Those are my
Thank
points.
you very much, Lawrence. Thank you very much. As we make a short break of 1 minute, we come back to the discussion in play. The rapport between insurance sector and the health sector, can it really establish the best healthcare in Uganda? We are going to have a discussion onto that and see whether in Uganda the health sector can, amalgamate with the insurance sector and bring out the best for the people of Uganda. You remember, we had a discussion here concerning about how people were having problems in getting money to treat their people. Some of them would be discharged with a bill of 1 million or over 1 million. And that became a very big problem to our people. And you remember again, some people had even passed on, but getting their bodies would cost them a lot of money. That was on the bill. Therefore, in this discussion, we are going to look at how the insurance sector can really help us to subsidize the healthy costs or health service costs. Don't go away. Remember, we are live on Facebook, Chimbugwe Live, and UNN TV official, and on the Twitter, as well as on our other platforms like the website Get UNN at getunn.com. Please don't go away. We have just 1 minute break and we come back. Thank you very much.
Time takes a toll on everyone, they say. Time is merciless, it won't wait for us to change. Time, I am stressing out, I can't figure out what to say. Oh, time, just give us time. Time, looking back on pictures, and I find it hard to see you and myself in places where we used.
We'll be back once again and I welcome you once again to this show, The Tower at UNN. As we mentioned earlier before the break, we are looking at the insurance sector vis-a-vis the health sector. Let me bring in initially Dr. Serubanja. We have all along discussed an issue, concerning about the rapid and the hiking of prices of the services. And we expressed concern about how people are unable to cover up these costs. And when you look at what is happening in Uganda, the culture seems to be very unprecedented, that many people don't go for checkup in your hospitals. Neither do they go for regular checkup, because one, they don't have enough funds. Two, they always possibly don't see it relevant. Three, it's too much for them to cover up. I mean, so in this regard, doctor, would you please give us an insight on what you see the biggest problem that hikes the prices of the prices of service of the health services in Uganda? Go ahead. Doctor, are you with us, or we lost you? Doctor, do you hear us? Okay, let me bring in Lawrence. Lawrence, what is your take on what is really, if somebody talks about insurance, because being in a developed country like you are in the US, everyone talks about insurance, because the first thing that you think about when you enter the US would be having an insurance. I don't know why it is so like that, and so it is in other developed countries. This is basically because life is the most essential and most important gift that we get from God, and we have to keep it, I mean, with a lot of concern. And here comes a situation that, given the situation that we've been having of COVID in Uganda, and people have been having trouble with paying all these costs, or when it comes to going for treatment. Can you discuss what is the trend of the possibly the insurance system in the US vis-a-vis the cost of the cost of services, especially the medical services?
Well, thank you very much again, Dr. Jericho, for that question again. If I may go a little farther back, probably 2 or 3 centuries back, and I give you just a small snippet of the history of insurance down here in America. I would start with Benjamin Franklin. That is in 1752, when he established the Philadelphia Contribution Ship for the insurance of houses from loss of fire. So at that point, and by the way, if you might just keep that date in mind, that's 1752. It's technically before even the US was founded. So It didn't even take the US to be established at that point that people saw the relevance of having some form of insurance. And what is insurance? If I may just go by a simple definition that we have everywhere, it's simply protection from loss. So it could be property, it could be life. And of course, when it comes to health, it's purely protection from loss of life. So what might damage life is everything that you know. It's accidents, it's going to be diseases, it's anything that threatens life of any individual out there. So if I might just take you further, just a few other events or landmarks that have happened over the years in the insurance business or industry in the US. We had an event in 1851 where New Hampshire as a state was the first to have an insurance commissioner. And this landmark as well shows you how the industry was trying to evolve and get closer to the echelons of power, where they can actually effect real change, which is protection against loss. Moving further, we had more cases that came up. By the way, these events already are triggered by some sort of agitation or some kind of lobbying and events along the way that lead to these monumental landmarks that keep structuring the industry a certain way. Like, for instance, we had a Supreme Court case in the 18th century, I think it was 1869, where Paul was versing the state of Virginia, arguing about what insurance is exactly. And it was interesting how they concluded on that case that insurance is not necessarily a transaction of commerce. And that is a little mind-boggling. You're like, okay, if you're giving in money, you would imagine that it is commerce. You're giving in money, you have to receive something, so it should have been a service. But all these happen along the way to shape the industry a certain way. But fast forward into the 19th century, if we might go closer to the years where we are, we have life insurance policies that were getting sold out in the 1920s, and we had close to 120 million life insurance policies being given out, or rather sold out here in the US. That is significant. 120 million life insurance policies. That's huge. That means that people are actually into this arrangement or insurance for good. This is the 1920s. That's about 100 years ago. Moving closer and closer to where we are, there was, of course, the setting up of all these insurance regulatory and standards that have come in along the way, like the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, that is in the 1870s. We have the National Insurance Commissioners adopting the Unfair Settlement Claims Act in the 1990s, coming up to the 1990 Congress passing the Graham-Leach-Billy Act for financial modernization, which permits banks to actually partner with insurance companies to better serve the people, because they need a good financial backing in order to effectively protect people against all these losses, because it's money in the background that is going to pay for those medical bills that you're going to, face when you actually fall sick. And of course, more recently, we had the 2010 Obamacare Act come in, which came in, yes, 2010, but interestingly, on the state level in Massachusetts, we had already some reforms. Already they had a health character reform coming in a little earlier, which is, I think, 4 years before. And all this is to show you how insurance has actually progressed over the years to where we are right now. But purely insurance is there to help people avoid useless loss of life. And purely that's what it is.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Thank you very much for that insight. Let me bring in Mr. Sunday. Mr. Sunday, you work with the Insurance Regulatory Authority of Uganda, and you are the planners of insurance. And actually, you regulate all the insurance, insurance companies, and you set policies that concern. And the good thing, you are the director for policy. I want you to go through us. Do we have insurance in Uganda? Do people really know that they have insurance in Uganda?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Juko, and I want to thank my brother Lawrence. I think he's given us a very good foundation for this topic, taking us through history and how insurance has evolved. The experiences, of course, of the developed world are advanced, but even in our own country, it has really evolved, right from the colonial days up to about 1969, when we had the first local insurance company licensed in Uganda. Yes, indeed, insurance is in Uganda. But of course, when I hear the figures that Lawrence speaks of way back in 1920s, I develop some goose pimples somehow. But I like this conversation because we are speaking to the people who can help us take this message far. I will start by saying and agreeing with Lawrence that insurance is very critical. because there are so many things that happen which are beyond our control. And whenever they happen, we are not prepared. COVID, I think, has been a very classic case. And the insurers now are riding on the back of this experience that has reached everyone to sell the message of insurance. That even me personally, who works and I have a monthly check, I have colleagues who have put their property to the banks to get money to pay bills because their relatives have gotten sick and they cannot raise that, what I would call at the moment, abnormal sum. I can give an example of a colleague actually who actually lost a mother last week in some hospital which I will not mention. They paid 70 million shillings, but they still have 157 million shillings to pay. Now, even if you are an average family in middle income, that's a lot of money that you may not come across. So we want to take advantage of this experience that everybody has experienced in one way or the other to tell the people that insurance is the major way, tested way of managing things which are beyond our control. Now, the sector, and I want to assure the people listening that the sector is improving day by day. When I joined the sector in 2012, actually a year before, it used to be called, it used to be a small sector. But for the last 10 years, the sector has, I think, multiplied itself by about 7 times in a period of 10 years, owing to the strong regulatory framework that we have put in place. The challenge we've had, and I think the people, our viewers here, may be having some experiences, was that people did not trust insurance in Uganda. People thought insurers were actually gamblers, that they were thieves collecting money but not able to clear claims as and of when they come up. Now, the Insurance Regulatory Authority of Uganda introduced a very strict law, initially under the Insurance Act 2011, but which has been reviewed, and it's now Insurance Act 2017. With the Act, we have developed very strict regulations. And in addition to that, we have also issued very strict guidelines. And some of the guidelines point directly at the claims to ensure that if you pay your premiums and you enter into a contract and the loss as provided for under the contract happens, then you should be able to be compensated. And we have also defined the time frames over which you should be compensated. If, for instance, a claim is 5 million Uganda shillings, there is no need of spending more than 5 working days before that claim is settled. But we have also gone ahead and instituted what I would call a mini court at the Insurance Regulatory Authority of Uganda, which we call the Insurance Complaints Bureau. In the new act, we are going to even upgrade that into a tribunal of sorts, where we are able to provide redress to the public that have complaints over the insurance. So, and that explains why the sector now has grown so rapidly over the years. People are increasingly gaining confidence into the sector. Lawrence talked about the life sector. The life segment is actually growing very fast. At the moment, it accounts for about 33% of the total premiums in the sector, which is good because in 2012, it was accounting for about 4%. Now we see it reaching 33%. That one gives us confidence that people are gaining momentum. They are seeing value in insurance. And where we are going, we want to appeal to all Ugandans to look at insurance as an option. If I speak about the health sector, of course, COVID, my colleagues here who have some experience in insurance, once COVID was declared a pandemic, traditional insurers would exclude that because pandemics are standard exclusions. But we engaged the insurance players and said, people, look here. This is the time to make yourselves relevant. Yes, we appreciate that pandemics are standard exclusions world over, but let's do it differently here. And I want to inform the people here that whoever had a medical insurance cover and had a medical insurance bill to pay, insurers picked it up in this period. But the unfortunate bit is that few people had the insurance covers under medical insurance. If I give you the numbers, less than 5%, less than 5% of our population has a medical insurance cover. Now, even when we are saying that the insurers are ready to pay the claims emanating from the COVID, but we are talking about a very small percentage. So, the message that I want to advance here is that the sector is ready. The sector is growing. The sector is regulated with very, very strong regulatory frameworks, and it is secure. But you must help us to get the people on the board. Of course, we have done so much in terms of awareness creation, in terms of engagements, but still a lot has to be done to get more people on board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sunday. I'll come back to you and I would love you to give those strategies that you put across to make sure that the population is sensitized of the importance of medical. But before I bring you back, let me go to Dr. Servanja. Dr. Servanja, you have worked in the health sector, and you know the pain people undergo as they look after their loved ones. And you know exactly that the income of the people is so minimal that actually they look at paying for insurance as possibly the third option, the third priority or fourth priority. And would you please indulge in this discussion and look at what do you think when it comes to the insurance companies help into helping our people subsidize the costs of health services in Uganda? Yes, Dr. Joel, did you get us? I'm afraid, Doctor, can you hear us, please? I'm afraid we cannot reach Dr.
I'm having a streaming issue. Dr. Juko, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead now. Everybody can hear you.
I'm experiencing a network issue.
Go ahead. Can you hear us, Doctor? Okay, we have lost Dr. Joel, but the technical team is working so that we can be able to. Let me bring in Desire. Desire, you are very critical.
Yes, I can hear you, but
given all
there are
other
problems
factors
with the network.
and looking at the health sector vis-a-vis what you have in Canada and related to what really needs to be, because one of the biggest issues that I think the people of Uganda are not having trouble with buying insurance, neither do they have a problem with insuring their loved ones. But I think the problem seems to be, one, the policy framework might not be very, very effective in implementation, especially when it comes to who is supposed to implement those framework. And also, is there the will by the government to make sure that such a thing happens, such that people can be really able to get to get services at a subsidized level? Yes, Desire.
So before I start this whole discussion of insurance, I would like to also look at insurance in a historical view. Because once you look at something historically, you can see how it built up and what it's come to be. And for me, when I look at the historic view of insurance, insurance became of great importance and helped nations such as nations in Europe, and also nations such as the United States of America become the big nations that they are, because what was insured was everything that was coming off of the African continent in that period of time. I cannot ignore that history from insurance and how insurance is part of this whole bigger system that makes healthcare inaccessible, even in a place like Canada, whereby we have national insurance, but still there's inaccess to healthcare. So let me break down how such things exist, and for me, what my worry is. Because my worry is not insurance, but my worry is that in Uganda, how can we get to actually have doctors at every remote place? Because we can campaign for insurance, but it's not insurance that treats people. And I can go ahead and talk about, there's so many things that we could talk about and criticize and analyze and bounce back. But then the bigger question that I want to address this from is how can we implement, the most important thing out of this is implementing actually a healthcare system and a policy system that works for our people and is for the need of our people. And how can it be done by people who have access to this knowledge? Because the role of people who can make these policies is very important as well. But how can they make these policies for, yeah, I'll say this in Luganda as well, and I'll mix a little bit of Luganda and English. We have to get to a point whereby people who have access to this knowledge and people who are flexible in these places and can make these policies by not focusing on ziba nsonga za gwanga versus an industry, if that makes sense. Because there's the industry that is insurance and that came off the enslavement of African peoples. Because insuring an enslaved African was one of the fundamental buildings of insurance and insurance policies. Before they threw off Africans on boats, they would say, if we throw them off, we're not going to get our money for insurance, because for every dead one, that's how capitalism works. That's how the whole system was set up. So we come then centuries after, we're looking again at the fact insurance. When I was first told about insurance and a life policy, and the fact that if I died, I would have paid certain premiums for it to enable my burial. But then we have to look at the cultural context of our people. When you die and you get buried, we already have burial grounds. How is that going to interact either violently or in favor when it's set up on the country? Whereby here, funeral homes are a big business. They are not to be messed with. Insurance is a big business. We're talking about it generates a lot of income and money. But how can we match it to actually, what we need is not to generate those amounts of money, but what we need is for people to have access to healthcare. So then how do we get policy writers and people who are interested in extending healthcare to the Ugandan people, regardless of how much they earn? How do we merge those things, and how do we make sure that even in the education of even the structure of insurance has to change and cannot be a complete copy and paste? Because if it's a complete copy and paste, it will not match us as people that we are.
Okay, thank you very much, Desire. I think Desire has brought a very pertinent issue, Mr. Sandy, when she said that, if you effect the insurance healthy insurance, you need to also to look at the availability of physicians, because these people have to be deep in the villages whereby people are allocated, because you will not have insurance catering for a person who is deep in the village on a physician that is not recognized by the state. I would like you to indulge again, Sandy, over this and show our viewers the relevancy of, if you relate it to, I think if we can have Doctor hearing us, I would throw that point to him first before I throw it to the regulatory authority, because the doctor himself knows how pertinent it is for an insurance system to work in terms of the health, that you have to be with physicians all over the country that you could allocate to most of the members that pick up the insurance policies, the health insurance policies. Do you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you
That's great.
can you quickly paraphrase the question for me, because I've had a network issue?
Yes, I'm talking about Desire talked a very pertinent point that if you to indulge a lot of people in this business of health insurance, it will need a lot of physicians involved deep in the villages, because you need to allocate physicians to these people that buy policies. So how do you relate that to the situation we have in Uganda? Because some places are too remote that medical doctors don't want to go there. And if they went there, they would be on hospitals that are big, and such hospitals are not easily accessible by the local population.
Thank you. I've missed a part of the discussion. I was not able to make my points, but I would like to first talk about my own view of the insurance sector in the country.
Yes.
First of all, the out-of-pocket payments that we are making as people in the country are absurd. We are having about 42% of the health budget being met from the out-of-the-pocket, 15% being government funding, and about 41% to 42 being donor funded of our health sector, and just 2% insurance coverage. By insurance coverage, we are talking about community-based insurance schemes that have been improvised by communities in different parts of the country, and of course, the group insurance that is being covered by most of the companies, but that is so much in the urban centers. So most of our people are paying out of the pocket. These hospitals that are being talked about as being remote. What makes them remote is, first of all, they do not have the equipment. Second, they do not have the drugs. So as a doctor, when they deploy you there, within a very short while, sorry about that, within a short while, you are frustrated because you neither have the equipment or nor do you have the drugs. The patient lines are going to be very long, and you do not have anything you're going to do for these patients. Now, when we have a functional insurance scheme, what will happen that the quality of healthcare will improve. As a doctor, we are trained in both urban centers and rural areas. In my training, I had time when I was in Bwera, in Kasese, at the border of Uganda and Congo, and I was there working. But what makes a difference in a remote setting where a doctor will be to take care of a patient is whether they have the health facilities, whether they have the drugs. So as long as the health insurance system comes in to ensure that drugs are available, to ensure that medical equipment is available, I think that the workforce will be in that sector, because if there is money in the health sector, patients are being paid. Patients are paying in one way or the other. Their services being catered for by the by the health insurance. Then definitely the workforce will be there. So all the physicians, all those places that are not covered by health workers, because they are leaving the country because of frustration of not being able to practice their trade in an environment which enables them. I think that most of those problems will be reduced if we have a very vibrant health insurance system, and which cuts across many hospitals and health facilities within the country.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sunday, Mr. Sunday, I bring you in here that being an economist, you know that the economic situation in Uganda is very absurd. That the members of the community seem not to be having a very consistent kind of earning, which would enable them to pay for the premium. And here is a situation that it's only working with people that have possibly monthly payments and or earning a little higher than the average earning of a Ugandan. And in this situation, majority of the people, and how do you call it? There is an economic term that they use in Uganda. Is it hand on? How do you call them? That they, daily hands to mouth. Yes. So that really scares people, and we think if we put insurance like health insurance an obligation, people will not be able to cover up. For example, here in my state, Massachusetts, whoever lives in Massachusetts is obliged to paying insurance or to having insurance. And if you don't, then they'll have to penalize you when you file your taxes for not having insurance. So how can we effect such a kind of system in a situation whereby people are earning, majority of the people are earning hands to mouth?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Duke and my colleagues. Maybe before I answer that directly, I want to raise 2 or 3 points,
Yes,
and
go
some
ahead.
of them actually are responding to some of the comments I'm seeing in the chat.
Yes.
People seem to have lost hope. From what I see, many comments point towards a state of hopelessness in the country. But of course, beyond the insurance, because I see aspects like corruption, I see aspects like dictatorship and all that. And I want to give comfort that this is our country. So we can only work to make it better. Number 2, I wanted to mention that there are 2 types of health or medical insurance that we are talking about here. And I think Dr. Joel elaborated on that. We have commercial, and that's what we have in Uganda today. We have private companies providing medical insurance.
For their
Now,
workers.
when you look at the price is not so small for an ordinary person, and that probably explains the figures. Dr. Joel mentioned 2%. I want to put it at about 5%. I know probably he has based on the UBO statistics. We are in discussions to rectify that. We talk about 5% of adult population having access to medical insurance. That is still small. When you look at the community-based healthcare initiatives, the 2%, again, that is subsidized in most cases by donations. Now, the system that we are talking about, that we have been agitating for, is having a national health insurance scheme. And I want to tell our viewers here that as I talk, the National Health Insurance law is before the president for assenting. It was approved by the parliament. It is before the president for assent. Whether he assents to it or not is another issue. It has delayed on his step. I don't know whether there are some other considerations. Now, to go directly to your question, in that law, because that's the insurance that we are talking about for everybody. This one is for the Dr. Joels and a few others who can afford, whose employers can pay, because even me may not afford it if I'm paid from my pocket, but my employer affords me that as a benefit. But for the country, we are looking at the National Health Insurance Scheme. Now, in that scheme, it is provided that me and you who have ability to pay should pay. And by paying, we are in position to subsidize access to those ones who live from hand to mouth, or what we technically call the indigents. So it is anticipated that the resources which will be pooled from the working population, and by the way, I want to inform you that now there has been some efforts to tap money from the informal sector, the informal but fairly formal sector. There have been systems in place. URA has taken the lead, and the other agencies are riding on that to make sure that these people can also contribute. NSSF, there are many informal workers who are currently now contributing to saving schemes. So those ones can contribute. And insurance works on the law of large numbers. If you have very many people contributing, what is going to happen is that the cost of access is going to be very small, so that even this person who is living from hand to mouth can now afford. It is also anticipated that for these ones who cannot pay anything, the indigents, government will put aside a fund. So government will actually be in effect paying the premiums for these ones who cannot afford. Now that comes with advantages. Number 1, there will be money to purchase the drugs, the facilities that Dr. Joel has talked about. Because again, insurance does not in itself provide health care. Insurance is a financing mechanism for healthcare access. So the point I'm trying to raise here is that if we have a national healthcare system that is a health insurance system that is in position to mobilize resources, these resources can in turn be allocated to the acquisition of the drugs, the facilitation of the healthcare, the doctors, the professionals, and all that. And in the end, we shall be able to have a system that works. Of course, the fears of corruption and all that will remain. I don't want to take that route that we don't do anything because we fear that this money will be eaten. Let's borrow from what other countries have done. Rwanda has done this, and it is actually one of the classic successful cases in having a national healthcare insurance system that works. Kenya has tried, and they have achieved a lot of mileage. Tanzania is moving, so Uganda can also move in that direction. And I trust that if we have very many people contributing towards healthcare financing, then it is possible to have subsidized access by all Ugandans, with the net effect being improved health outcomes. And of course, again, as an economist, when you have a healthy population, you have a faster growing economy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sunday, over the insight. And let me bring in Lawrence. Lawrence, as an experienced person in terms of the insurance, the healthcare sector, would like you to give us an insight. Here is a situation, as I mentioned it to Dr. Joel, that we have a shortage. Of course, as he mentioned, we have a shortage of resources to help our doctors in Uganda. If they are, although they might not be enough, but even those that are there, they are lacking some basic resources, which can affect the operationalization of the insurance, the health insurance, when it comes to deep or those hard to reach places in deep in the villages. How would you reconcile the situation that we have here vis-a-vis the situation that we have in Uganda?
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Jacob, once again. I really appreciate many of the points that my co-guests have actually put forward on this subject. If I may still indulge more into where I stand, or rather where I live, and how to borrow some of these insights on how to help our people back home, I would wish to give you just a small overview of how the health insurance is in the specifically in my state, Massachusetts. If I may, there is a law that authorizes the Executive Office of the Health and Human Services through the Division of the Human Assistance, and that is what administers the state's Medicaid program known as the Mass Health. Now, you should know that this law is specific to the state, so it is considering the needs of the people who are within that territory.
Yes, Lawrence, can you speak up a little higher?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, if you can hear me, I hope you heard that first point. I was just trying to say that...
Yes, it was clear, but a little bit low.
A little low, okay. Okay, I was only trying to pull out that Massachusetts as a state has a law through the Executive Office of the Health and Human Services that actually administers the state's Medicaid program known as the Mass Health. So what is Mass Health, or how does someone qualify or actually get it? And there are only two, or rather actually three requirements. One, we look at your income. How much do you get per week, per month, per year? And based on that, there's an interesting metric which they use, which is the FPA, which is a federal poverty level. I think that goes back to what my colleague was talking about, the hand to mouth. So the closer you are to that poverty level, the more you might actually be, the more likely you are going to be exempted from actually even paying any premiums for insurance. But you will still receive the same insurance cover, or probably even better. Yeah, than the people.
Yes.
Yeah, probably even better than some people who are paying all these other premiums. But they're looking at the income, because they know income is diverse and it's subject to where you are on your career or in life, whatever you're doing. And then we'll look at your residence. Where do you stay? Of course, you have to be staying in the state. But again, in a few instances, they might waive that, and you still are able to access health insurance within the state, even if you don't necessarily maintain an address. And of course, the last one is, of course, based on citizenship or your immigration status or your identity. Case in point is, I think you had, and you see many of, some of even our celebrities back home, they usually fly their people in to come and deliver their kids from here, for whatever reasons that is really personal. But again, it's because there's this insurance cover that would enable them, and in some cases they didn't actually in the past pay. I think that is getting revised over time, that now people have to pay for those kinds of services. But as you can see, the requirements are not so many, and it shouldn't be complicated. It's just three: income, residence, and your identity or your citizenship or whatever status you're having, your immigration status, and that's it. And if I look back home, are we keeping any kind of tabs, or are we keeping any data or research on any of these three per se? Income. Do we know how much some people earn? Because throwing people in that everyone go and access health insurance. Now, a person who is selling maybe tomatoes in a market is not going to be able to afford the same cover as someone who is in a bank or someone who is a border rider. The three are totally different income levels. They can't really afford the same care. But if we can have the regulator come in to try to reconcile and balance the terrain. In the US, it's a little easier because every state is going to look at what is happening within its own environment and then try to carve out a plan that is going to work for everyone. And if we may, just looking at those three, just concentrating on those, if we can just have all that paid attention to, even in the law that we have, because I heard we have the national insurance, the national health insurance scheme or law that is before the president. I think if we just concentrated on how eligibility is going to be gotten, that is one way. And moving forward, it should be a lot easier to move forward after that.
They can't.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll bring in Sunday. I wonder whether Sunday is in studio. Yes, Mr. Sunday. You have heard how Lawrence has tried to, digest the issue to do with the eligibility of the people, especially here in Massachusetts, that it becomes quite too much of the government involvement, because there are some people that are totally kept below their earning being below the poverty line, and such people really don't have to pay any premium. Instead, they have to get money from the other levels of classes that have to cover up for these ones. And that's the reason why you would see the new migrants and actually other people seem to be covered up by such costs. How do you relate that to a situation that we have in Uganda?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Juko, and again, thank you, Lawrence, for those insights. I will start by saying that the examples from Massachusetts are good, and the other examples are really good for us to benchmark. But I am tempted to think that probably we are comparing two systems which are way apart. And I want my colleagues here to agree with me. I see many comments, and actually I'm about to run away Many of them are they are very
No,
good.
don't run away.
I'm joking. I'm really joking. We are operating
Yes,
in two
please.
completely different environments. Insurance as a sector is operating within a broader policy, structural, and governance framework. So there are
Yes.
things that insurers can do. There are certain things that are way beyond the insurance. And if we are to
Yes.
compare very, very comfortably with the US and others, probably we have some years ahead of us. And it is our viewers here who have to make that change that can cause that transformation so that things work properly. But that said, the new law has some provision. I mentioned the indigents. The indigents are not expected to pay. Actually, the current proposals are such that the people who are employed, people who have a salary that can be traced, will be the initial contributors. It is phased in such a way that we start with these ones who can be traced. I pay 4% of my salary, my employer pays 4%, and this money goes to a fund. But when it comes to access, all Ugandans are able to access. Because the idea here of insurance is that those ones who have are able to provide or to support those ones who do not have. I'm an economist, and there is a theory which actually I like, that actually those who have, because those who do not have do not have. And it is just fair that those who have should be able to support those who do not have. So that is the philosophy behind our law. But in the long term, the second phase will be, how do you get these people who are not living from hand to mouth? They are informal, they earn huge sums of money, they can contribute, but they are not easily traced. And that's why you have partners such as URSB. URA has introduced electronic invoices and receipts. So meaning that even if you're in the informal, you somehow find yourself in the formal, and then you can be able to also make a contribution. Then for those ones who are not capable, they will not contribute, but government from the other sources of government revenue will make a contribution, an aggregate, a consolidated contribution for that particular population, so that together these funds put together will be able to provide healthcare access to all Ugandans. Now, as far as whether we have the statistics, they may not be very quality statistics, but there are some statistics which show who is poor and where they are, as provided by the Uganda Bureau of Statistics.
Thank you very much. Let me bring in Desire. Desire, it seems like the worry of the population sits too much into the problem of the earning and also the will. I've seen a lot of comments regarding the will and the ability of the community members, the will by the government and the community ability in this regard. How do you comment about the will of the government in this regard? Because the Insurance Regulatory Authority is working under a framework, and it is always guided by the principles of the overall kind of government policies. So they might have very good ideas, and of course they are, because I'm very sure the people that run the sector are very, very experienced. And on this regard, you find out that there are two divergent dimensions. The Insurance Regulatory Authority has its plans and its policy formulated to effect what they have. But again, there is a will of the implementation by the government. Because in this regard, we'll look at some of the issues that would come in. Would be possibly the government putting a policy. The parliament would establish a law that would oblige all members that possibly earn a certain amount of money to have an insurance, a health insurance policy, which I think if the government doesn't have the will not be able to be effected. So how would you indulge in that kind of discussion?
Before I start like this discussion, it's like we have to also acknowledge that there was a terms and condition and guiding policies and restrictions to our government. And then the question that I would pose, do they work? Like, just to us as normal Ugandans, we have a terms and conditions. We have ways in which our government is supposed to work. That's an example, and that's the head of the nation. Then we move down to the education sector. There are terms and conditions and how that sector is supposed to work. Does it work? Then we go to the transportation sector. There is a way how it's supposed to work. Does it work? The pattern repeats itself. So I do not blame people when they're skeptical of things like this, because the pattern has been repeating itself, not just over 5 years, throughout people's lifetimes. I've lived my whole lifetime with this pattern playing out. So it's like, for a minute, we need to, as a people, to stand still and then re-examine the whole situation. Because again, I'll go back to my initial thought. I personally do not think that us as a people, our problem is insurance. It hasn't been. Our problem is the failure and the decay of the healthcare system. And how has that happened? Why would we as a population relieve, especially those ones who are earning money, relieve the government of its responsibilities to deliver healthcare through an insurance system just because the government might subsidize for a portion of the population? Yet it's the same government that fails to deliver 100,000 Ugandan shillings to Ugandans in need during a pandemic and a state lockdown. All these things, we are seeing them throughout our lifetime. So I do not blame the skepticism that people would have towards an insurance system or instilling insurance or using insurance, because insurance is not going to we brought about insurance in this whole discussion as a way to increase affordability, but is that going to solve the access? I don't think that will solve access, because access to healthcare is much deeper than being able to afford. What we're doing is having other money generating avenues, but not solving the problem of inaccessible healthcare and decaying healthcare, because the doctors we have are reducing, access to medical equipment is reducing. So instead of the government buying medical equipment that it can use to nationalize healthcare, it's going to subsidize insurance policies for people to access healthcare in still a decaying health system. This is where I cannot understand how we can move forward before we address even the primary question, which is we need national healthcare that is free and accessible to all Ugandans, provided by the nation. But if we do it differently in a federal system that is given in every federal state and also is subsidized by the national government, that would be my.
Thank you very much, Desire. Dr. Servanja, you talking about Desire's idea of a point of view that regardless of whatever system that we apply, it seems like we are hitting a deadlock because the systems, there is a vicious circle of problems in all sectors. However, as a medical personnel, from the medical point of view, you always not despair because your function in the government or in the your functional factor should be keeping alive. Here is a situation that people need insurance, or I mean, people need health services, and the government has not provided the required possibly equipments in those hospitals. Then Mr. Sunday wants to give in or to give the service of insurance. So that kind of dilemma that we are in is what really needs a solution from you, the people, the technocrats that can see beyond our noses. What is your take about what really needs to be addressed in terms of availability of resources, especially in the medical services, and the availability of, the accessibility of those resources?
Well, the issues are pertinent. We currently, the current
You're not very clear, Dr. Joel.
Can you hear me?
Your network seems to be very interrupted. I think let the technical part work on this as we try to, should I bring in Lawrence? Lawrence, there is a dilemma here that there is people need the insurance, people need the health care services, and here comes a situation that people cannot afford the insurance. And in this regard, the equipments in the medical, the hospitals, are not available, even if the insurance, as Desire mentioned, was available. And the government would subsidize, but there are no medical equipment. There's no medicine in the hospitals. How would you react to such a situation?
Again, Dr. Duka, thank you so much. Going by your question as to there's no medicine in the hospitals, and then of course the doctors have fled the country and God knows where they ended up. And I think they've gone to places where they're probably better compensated other than some of our village. And yeah, exactly. Things like that. So many professionals have left. And yes, of course, the drugs are not there. And even when they are delivered, something happens and then they are found in someone's medical facility. We were just going through some of those files whereby even some big ministry officials are involved in these kinds of schemes, putting the medicine in their private hospitals. And for some reason, you can't exactly blame them because I don't want to use the word you can't blame them. They should be blamed, honestly, because why should you be getting public goods or services or whatever the state has put aside for its people, and then you turn it into a business? Just like Desire said, it's just a repeat pattern that happens everywhere, and then the medical sector or health sector is not insulated from this kind of trend. But if I may go to where probably some of the root causes of this is, living where the background, we started off with the background of how these people have actually built their health or their insurance industry for 3 decades. Now, we are hardly a decade there or even half a decade there. But I would probably want to see what plans. I'm really grateful that my colleague says there is a law before the parliament. But the law it's a good thing to have, and many of the people who are writing this law for are probably even never going to read it because people don't want to read. They only find out when they are victims. Now, like when we've had the COVID take over, national headlines, and it's all over the place. And I think it has touched everyone. I think everyone has had one of their family members or a relative or a friend be a victim to the COVID situation, with pandemic we're dealing with right now. The bills are so high, they can't handle. And when you look at it, you're like, what exactly does it take to treat COVID? Case in point, I always keep referring to where I am, not because I want to show you that these places made it in life. It's not really that they've made it. I think they have so many areas to improve. And they're trying to make the effort. And it's because they really try to put in, they have the will, like you say, to make things work. So we had COVID here. We had our mortality rate, deaths go on, and you saw all those numbers and everyone was calling, hey, people, what is happening? And good enough, most of us actually went through it unscathed. Of course, many people died. But I'll tell you that no one had to sell their car. No one had to sell their land, their house, or whatever to actually afford the treatment. It's because the state or the government or the people here are willing to work with the solution they've been given. We have, how does someone, for instance, just to ask a simple question from where it starts from, when or how do people access health insurance? Here, it's a very simple process. You're either going to walk into a walk-in center and then get your details taken. They determine whether you're eligible. I told you the only 3 requirements: your income, your residence, and your identity. That's it. They're not going to ask you any other thing. And my friend was actually able to quote the informal sector being one they target to actually get more clients for down there in Uganda. Well, the informal sector is about 50% there. Well, here it's a little smaller. It's only about 16% or something like that. So there are not so many people. But again, even then, when you're in the informal sector, still you have your national identification numbers, the ones you have out there, which for the US is the social security number. Now, how would these people be able to find out whether you qualify or not randomly? They have systems and they are using technology. For Massachusetts, we have the MA21 system that actually just is able to check with your social security and see whether you actually meet or actually getting any benefits, and then they are able to determine your eligibility just based on that. We have also the HIX system that also matches systems with lots of federal databases, and it's able to determine that you can actually obtain health insurance at any cost, and you will not be very smart at hiding your income. I know people, especially if you're a Chikubo man, you bank all this money, and I don't know how much you make lots of money. The system might be hard, it might be a little harder to track you. But I'm glad that you have right now the NI, I think the NIN numbers out there, and all these other systems already. So you already have where to start from. Everyone's income can be traced if you actually wanted to actually trace it, and then get people into taking on insurance. And of course, here you're going to be penalized if you don't have insurance at the end of the year. You can work, make all the money you need, don't pay for insurance. If you don't have it when you're filing your taxes, they'll be like, okay, you don't have this deductible, they're still going to charge you for it. So you're still going to lose the money. So you might as well just pay for it. Now, back home, how are we going to move people towards that? Let the regulatory body do what it's doing. I think they're doing such a great job. The law is a very good starting point, but it's just as it is. It's the law. We need now systems. Let's leverage on technology. Technology can take us very far. It's why we're right now in 4 or 5 different places right now, and we're able to talk and exchange all these ideas. We can share. We can learn a lot more. So let's just use the technology we have, and it's there. We're spending a lot of money on all these other, they're also critical to whoever, but we could put a lot more on what actually is going to save people's lives, because with the people, the nation is strong. The US, that's why they're trying to guarantee that everyone gets health insurance. It's why all these acts are made. The Obamacare, making sure everybody is covered. Everybody. If I may just share something very small, just over here with what we have, the coverage, I think, for the health insurance, it might have been, okay, this is a little older, maybe 2 or so years. 2 years is not so bad anyway for reference statistics. But the US has over 90% of its population actually covered by some form of insurance. And the uninsured are about just 9.2. It's effort. These people are not there because they are sitting down and just writing laws which they're not going to implement, or they're not using whatever technologies, they are taking advantage of the technologies we have out there and all that. They actually been putting in the effort and the will. So if you can have all the wheels going, the government does its part, the regulatory body does its part. And I think the other thing is, I like the adverts that they usually put out on, I think they're usually done by the donors, UHMG and all these other guys. They have so many adverts advertising, especially it has been mostly in reproductive health and HIV, which is good. I think those are really big challenges that we're tackling out there. But imagine we put that effort in insurance, in making sure that everybody buys into the idea. Here they are going to bombard you with thousands of adverts everywhere. You go to YouTube, that you're asking, yeah, you're insured. You're on your phone, a text comes in, a telemarketer is reaching out. Do you have insurance? If you don't have, somehow they're going to get you in. You're on TV, adverts are flowing. So
Even
we
calls.
would need, we would
Even
need
we
that
get
kind.
calls trying to reduce the prices of the insurance. Yes.
Yeah, they will call you so many times. I don't know whether we can have a national call center to handle all the 40 million Ugandans who are not insured. That would be a very interesting venture. But you see, there's effort there and the will, and it takes time. What we can do is we can try to see where these people are, where the US is, and try to copy all the best practices they have. And I think at the end of the day, we can get there. And our people don't fall sick that much. I think the first time I went to a hospital there, I told them, I think I've only been to one optician once, and they're like, what? Just once? And they're like, yeah, I don't fall sick. And that is the mentality with many of our people. We are not really people who go to the hospital so much. But I think we're getting into the culture. If you don't check, you'll never know where you are as far as your health is.
Yeah. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you very much.
That's why I leave that.
Thank you very much. I wanted to bring in Dr. Serubanja. I wonder whether he's still with us. Dr. Serubanja, are you still with us? Let me bring in Mr. Sunday. Mr. Sunday, it seems like, being the Insurance Regulatory Authority boss here, everyone is focusing on you and everybody's asking questions. I know that usually the government, because you are a civil servant, if I'm to speak it loud, and your role is done in accordance to the policies that you have. But again, we always have to bring in the will and the ability for the government to, like Lawrence mentioned, that to bring in all the possible power behind you, so that what you have in your policy drawer go out properly. I wanted to, as we try to wind up, to give an insight of the strategies that you are drawing as the Insurance Regulatory Authority to make sure that everyone gets attracted to getting the medical insurance.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Juko and colleagues on this show. On a later note, I think Dr. Juko should have invited Ofono Pondo to respond to some of my life would have been a little easier with him on the side, because I see most of the questions, I think, are geared towards Ofono Pondo.
Yeah,
that is on a
you
later
are a
note.
civil servant. People, our esteemed viewers, Mr. Sunday is a civil servant that works for a regulatory authority, and his function is to set policies. Which policies, Okay, go ahead.
Yes, that was really on a lighter note, but I like the conversation.
Yeah.
I share in the emotions which I see pouring out. But I think we work in an ecosystem where there are so many players and so many dynamics that in most cases you end up talking. Moving may a little bit hard. But again, I want to give our viewers some comfort that if you have something which is hurting you in the foot, you don't cut off the foot. You look for what is hurting and remove it so that you continue walking. I want to agree with Lawrence that insurance works and insurance is the way to go. Now, I want to admit that there could be challenges, and indeed they are there. And these challenges are not only in Uganda, they are challenges which are typical of developing economies. But I want to imagine that sharing into the insights that some of you guys have borrowed from elsewhere in the developed world, we can also improve our country. I have always believed that east to west, home again is best. So if there is a problem at home, we can work together and remove this problem so that we are able to make our country also a better country to live in. But that said, going to your question directly, Dr. Juko, for us as a regulator, what we initially looked at was that there was a problem on the supply side. I belong to the school of thought that if supply is okay, demand will be automatic.
That's true.
Now, what am I saying here? If you ask 100 Ugandans about the biggest problem with insurance, and I think I can clearly see it in the chart, they will tell you that insurers don't pay. Now, as a regulator, we started on working on the policy side to improve the supply. so that once you have bought insurance, you are able to be paid when a claim is made. And you are not just able to be paid, but you are paid in good time. We have succeeded on that by having a strong insurance act, where now what used to make people fail to pay, one of them was that they would sell insurance, but they would not get money. Insurance was bought on credit, typical of developing countries. We revised the law and said insurance now is cash and carry. Like you go to the supermarket to buy detergents and you pay cash, you should also pay cash on getting insurance, so that the insurer doesn't have an excuse of liquidity challenges for failing to pay. And by taking that approach, we are saying if Dr. Juko has bought an insurance policy, he has suffered a loss, and he's paid in 2 days, he will be the same Juko to tell 10 other people. But what we've been having is that Dr. Juko goes to the insurance company, submits his claim, he's told wait, and he waits forever. He tells 100 other people. A dissatisfied person will tell 100. A satisfied person will tell one, or even sometimes they keep quiet. So that's the policy approach that we have taken, because awareness alone will not resolve the problem. If we do not clean the house as insurers, the regulator has concentrated on cleaning the house first. And when we are through with that, then we have a national policy framework. At the moment, we do not have a national policy framework on insurance. So insurers are operating just like any other market setup. The more you advertise, the more you do what you sell.
Operating in an economic jungle.
Yes, but there is no national policy framework, especially on the medical insurance, which in our view should be the insurance to drive all the other insurance classes.
That's true.
We started with the supply side. We have moved towards having a national policy framework, and from there now working together with government, which I know people will not want to hear here. We shall be able to reach now to the down person who does not have money but uses his national ID to access health services, even at private health centers.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Sandy. Our viewers, we seem to be getting out of time, and we want you to involve in this discussion as we go on to wind up. I'll ask my producer to put a line online number that you can call and participate in this lovely show or this lovely discussion. That is, you have to send either a voice note or you'll have to call direct with our studio numbers, and then you'll be able to give in your submission or your discussion just within 1 or 2 minutes. As we try to wind up, I think we very unfortunately we lost Dr. Servanja because he had some issues. He would bring us on board here on the discussion. However, let me bring in Desire. Desire, you have heard how Mr. Sunday was trying to give his dimensional kind of approach, dimensional observation to this kind of discussion. And here you come in to give an insight on the situation that we have in Uganda, whereby people, though we have a problem of health facilities or health care services, again, there are private players that come in usually to cover up the government or the public hospitals. And most of the corporate people are running to those ones, and especially those that work with companies that offer insurance, as Mr. Sande mentioned. Would you please give an insight on what do you think would be done in order to, to strengthen the rapport between the insurance sector and the health sector?
So firstly, I want to start with, I think that the two sectors, this whole discussion of making them have a more in-depth relationship, they're independent of each other. Yes. And I think it's only in African countries, and for example, Uganda, where you find us taking away the responsibility of service delivery from a government. We relieve a government of that, only to come up with the different avenues that are offered are capital or money generating avenues that are based off of the economic rules of supply and demand, which are not rules that are educated to a normal Ugandan, but I could tell you, like, people in Chiku will still do the same practice. So then the question is, what is happening in these systems and in our countries, and how is insurance going to be communicated? That, because insurance will not guarantee you having insurance and paying for insurance, or the government subsidizing insurance, is not going to change the amount of medicine that is in, especially rural hospitals. Like, for me today, my main point will be where have we left service delivery, and how have we alleviated that role from government, not only as a people, but especially the native intellectuals of Uganda, the technocrats. How have they relieved government of their role to deliver services by focusing on different avenues and fields that they're educated in, instead of looking? I don't know the best way to better communicate this, but how do we shift the discussion to national problems instead of industry problems? Because insurance is just an industry sector problem being made into a national problem. But the national problem we have in place is healthcare and service delivery. Because yes, we have talked about the Insurance Act and all these policies. We have a whole constitution that is being ripped to shreds, step by step by step. So how is a policy act? So we have to look at the context Uganda is in. The constitution of the nation means nothing, almost. So how can you convince a Ugandan that because of a policy act? So then we need to go back to the drawing board to service delivery. How do we all work together for better service delivery? And then later we can start to focus on industries.
That's very true. That's very true, because everything starts from the head when it comes to thinking and also planning. The head plans for the legs. Thank you very much, Desire. As try to wind up, I wonder whether this from our producer, we have some people that are ready to give in their views as we try to wind up. Would you? I would ask our producer to put a number online so that we can be able to, people can be able to participate. Yes, let's have some members of the audience, the viewership, a member of the viewership, to give in their views as we listen and note down so that we can be able to answer them. Yes, go ahead, sir. Let's go ahead. If we have, let me ask my producer if he has some of our people trying to give us their point of concern. As we wait for that, Lawrence, would you please indulge in a discussion that the people of Uganda seem to be, still skeptical of the availability of, the functionality of the insurance services, and how can you add your voice to that of Mr. Sandy to, awaken the people of Uganda that insurance is very important and needs to be a way to go.
Okay, if I may, Dr. Jiko, I would just want to share with you something very small over here about what many Ugandans go through, which is medical expenses for certain challenges they face. Apparently, there's did I get this? Yep, I think everyone can see. Can you see that chart right next to me for a health insurance breakdown of a heart surgery?
I think we cannot see it unless it is sent to the producer.
Oh, you cannot see.
Unless you send it to the producer to put it for us.
Okay. I think let me just try to get that one going. But if I may, I'm gonna try to get that one across. But yep, that's the screen right there.
Yes.
You got it exactly. So we have. If I may, I think so many of our people have actually had to go through fundraising drives, usually through car washing and all these other schemes they come up with to take people to India and all these places for heart surgery. But if I might just try to dissect that issue right there and probably convince one or two people out there as to why they should or probably could opt for insurance. Just look at what that is. If you have a heart surgery that is going to cost you about 100,000, give or take. Of course, these are American prices, but out there it might be cheaper. But I think it goes to that much. When people are fundraising, they're usually fundraising in hundreds of millions.
Around 370, 350, around that. Because we have a friend who went for kidney transplant in Turkey. It was around 100 and I think 170 million. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you have that kind of a bill and that kind of health challenge, you probably you don't have that money, and probably even if you sold everything you have, you might not be able to meet even half that bill. But the beauty of insurance is here. If you have a plan, and maybe you had just a regular plan, you have a $2 million limit. And I think as of 2012, it was increased to unlimited in some states here. So you can get sick as many times, you'll still be covered many times over. And you have a deductible of 1,000. That is money you pay. And then the insurance company is going to pay for the rest of it. And then you have a 20% co-insurance, which is a certain percentage of your bill. All these, by the way, are all put in place by the different laws or regulations that the insurance body, and they are my colleague Sandy can look into that, how that is structured. I'm not sure, but again, with the 20% there, and you have a $2,000 limit for your insurance cover on that bill, just look at how that plays out. That means if you have $100,000 you have to pay, the insurance you'll only have to pay the 1,000, which is your deductible, which you have to pay, plus the 20% co-insurance. And maybe let's just put it at maybe 1,000 as well. That means you're paying another extra 100 or 200, up to $200. So you'd pay $1,200, and the insurance company is going to pay the rest of your bill. And it doesn't matter if you go back for that surgery 2 or 3 times. I'm sure you only need one. But if that is the case, just look at that. People getting down to look for money through car washers and all these other things we do all over social media. We need to fundraise, GoFundMe. You don't really need that if you have the insurance cover in place. And it's that simple. That simple.
Thank you.
If we could just get people just to buy into this kind of line of thought and give them practical examples like this. This is just one I just picked out on one scenario, and I'm sure some people have had to deal with this kidney surgery and all that. Those surgeries are very expensive, but with insurance, look at that. You're not even paying 10% of the actual bill. So we can get our people in if we can share this information. I gave you the example of UHMG and all these other marketing groups that we have. They could focus on marketing insurance on a national scale everywhere, and then we can have all people in. And just like Mr. Sanders said, the more people we have, the lower the cost. The reason you're paying the $1,200 for a $100,000 bill, medical expense, it's just purely because the numbers are there. I just told you they're covered to almost 90% of the population is in there. Now the question is, how are we going to help our people get there? How are we? The law is a good starting point. Let's keep bombarding them with more messages, more billboards, try to engage them on all levels. I like the idea of the federal system because here I can see it works. There, it's a little all over the place. We tend to think that we are so small to be a federation of some sort. But I think you could do it because the diseases that people are facing in the northern part are not the diseases in the southern part or any other part. And just based on those statistics, if we have them, we can be able to help
Yes,
different
Lawrence, I cut you a little shorter. We have a caller online. Let's have the
Right.
caller. Yes, caller.
Thank you very much, Dr. Juko, and all the people I see on the panel.
Thank you very
My
much.
name is Chichamu West.
Yes,
I came a little bit late. I didn't know the topic, but when I tried to hear and to see, it was about, I think, talking about discussing how the government or how insurance and the government can work together to help the indigenous people or the people in Uganda how to in respect of their health care, how to
yes.
improve the healthcare services to the people of Uganda. I thought maybe that is the topic, but I came late. I'm sorry if I'm off topic.
Yeah, you're on track,
But
Mr.
me,
Chamwes. You're on track.
what I
Go
know
ahead.
is that everything which we see going on in Uganda, they are deliberate things. They are not accidental. They are not there that they could not be solved. But there are two things which are making those things to be there. The two things are the politicians in Uganda and the government itself, the failed state. The government is a failed state. That is no argument on that. If it is a failed state, those people, the failed state cannot think of the people. They are only thinking about themselves and their small group or their family, something of that kind. So this insurance thing would be the best to do what? The best way of improving the care, the health care of the people. If the government was caring, I think you can take an example of a country like Rwanda. This is our neighboring country and it has just came up. It has not been too far. It has just came up after Uganda was already there and was already doing a lot of things. So they're wherever they are now, it's because of Uganda. And I saw a video. There was a video which was showing me how they have improved their care services. There are some robots in the hospitals there. Their machines, they are helping to do the services. And I even see drones delivering medicine to places. They are delivering to healthcare centers in rural areas. These drones. That means the government there is caring for the people because it has a feeling that that these people are their people. They are their own.
Mr. Chamwes,
So
I want you to look, Mr. Caller.
what
Hello? Okay, I was trying to, ask the caller to, make it clearer, but I think we have lost that one. I'll bring in, before we go for another caller, I would bring in Dr. Silvani because we had lost you for some few minutes. Unfortunately, we have another caller on. Yes, caller. Yes, caller. You are clear and loud. Can you go ahead, please? Unfortunately, your network seems to be very slanty. Let's bring in Doctor as we try to wind up. Dr. Silvanja.
If the government of Uganda was interested in improving the health care services of the people of Uganda, I'm sorry, Dr. Juko, I don't know. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. But I was telling you that leaving other
When I
factors
turn, when
constant.
I leave on the TV, I don't think that will be interfered. But when I turn it off, mm,
I think we have dropped you because of time. And I was saying, Dr. Serwanja, here is a situation that Lawrence has been talking about, that it is usually the will of the people, I mean, of the government, and as well, the planning, the strategy of the planners in the sector, vis-a-vis when you interrelate the two, the medical and the insurance sector. I would like you to indulge a little bit in how you feel like you should come up with the, I mean, we should try to socket together with the insurance sector in order to bring out what is best for the poor of Uganda.
I think, thank you, Dr. Joko. We have no doubt that we need health insurance in the country. Okay, we have seen over the COVID pandemic the bills that we've had to deal with. People are dealing with bills of more than 100 million shillings, and yet if we pulled together resources, okay, we would be having a more vibrant health sector. Yes, we've had debates about the corruption ongoing with the current, um, you know, health structure that we're having, whereby people go to hospitals and there are no service fees that people have to pay. But this has translated into poor health care. So we need new innovative measures to improve the quality of health care across the country. And insurance is really one of them. Yeah, we looked at the current plans of the national health insurance system, whereby 4% is to be charged from people who are in formal employment, and maybe their employers adding to that money, and about 100,000 shillings to be charged from those in the informal sector who are gainfully employed. But again, of course, all these figures are need more input from the stakeholders. Yes, there's been a lot of consultation from the different stakeholders, but there is need more, because our formal sector is a very small sector, probably about 1 to 2 million people, and yet they're the ones facing so many charges already. But there has to be, first of all, there has to be more dialogue on this matter, okay? More input, more marketing on this particular matter, and most especially at the time like now, where everybody has experienced the exorbitant out-of-pocket charges that one has to go through in order to have somebody treated for a disease like COVID that is continuing to affect many people. So this is a dialogue that I feel that we cannot summarize in only one section, okay? But it's a dialogue that has to be taken on a national level. The way we took constitutional, the making of the constitution on a national level, we need to do this, because otherwise we cannot, as much as we feel fed up with the current situation in the country, we cannot look at the health sector in the country remaining the way it is and not do anything, okay? And not try new ways that we have seen work in Rwanda, work in Ghana, work in our communities in Chisizi Hospital, for example. In Chisizi area, they have a community-based health insurance system. So we need to continue to do much more to make health insurance dream realized in the country, because it's the way forward for our people to all get cared for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, viewers. The reason why we bring these people down here, as you see them, the technocrats and these experts in IRA, is to make you aware of how we can help our country to bring together our efforts, because we tend to have a lot of people who are very, very experienced, like you have heard how Lawrence was trying to give his views over this. So I think the IRA as well will also be able to pick a leaf, because as this channel or this TV, we try to bring people on board from which you people interrelate and be able to, bring something quite vibrant, and that can help our people in Uganda. We are trying to wind up. I wonder whether the producer has some voices to run as we try to wind up, because I'm gonna give each one 2 minutes to wind up as we get out of the studio. If the producer has some audios to send, then let's hear to them, and then from there we shall be. Let's run around five audios, and then from there we wrap up. Yes, go ahead.
Show. My question goes to Mr. Sandy. Dr. Jiko, thanks for the show. My question goes to Mr. Sandy. If you can spare us time and you come back on your own program and you teach us more about insurance in company, because as far as I know, that insurance company would have been effective if the government was prospering its transparency. You can be transparent, but by the end of the day, you end up being misled because of obwenge within the system. So I don't know how sure you can give us perhaps even some live examples that people have been stolen intention not even to be paid by their claims. They have an evidence of linked coaches. They have an evidence of Kasamba coach, the former bus company which was in Hoima, New Muratin.
Thank you very much, Omnyora. And let's have another one. Let's have around 5
Hello.
of them, and then yes.
Hello. This one goes to Mr. Sandy. I'm in health sector. I know everything about Murago. All even more than 10 hospitals around Uganda. If Mr. Sandy, as he says, that he's a policymaker, why don't they revive the plight of those national hospitals? Because since we have failed to look at the hospitals, as we call them, the mulagos, because you see there is a mulago of Masaka, mulago Kampala, mulago somewhere, everywhere. They should first do the renovations that were started 10 or 20 years ago within. If you went with a camera and went to Mulago Hospital, inside Mulago Hospital, not just at the buildings that have been painted, you would see the disgust in there. That environment is not fair for a medical personnel to work in. The beds are poor, the patients sleep badly, it's like they're in jail. Please, you're a policymaker, you talk with the so-called health ministers, you talk with the top bosses, please help Uganda. You are the people we always talk about that betrayed Uganda. The system rots from down, not from top. You are the people who are our voices. Please help Uganda. We know what we are talking about, leaving aside the medicines, but even the environment, not even a toilet works. This one I'm talking about is 10 or 15 years back. Go to Mulago Masaka, go to Kampala, go to Jinja, everywhere, government hospitals. Please, Mr. Sande, don't just write on papers. Do everything in reality. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, our caller. I think the correction is that Mr. Sande is a policy officer in the Insurance Regulatory Authority, not in the medical sector. Yes, let's go ahead with another. Mr. Sande, you'll have a chance to answer some of them. Okay. I think before, as you wrap up, Mr. Sunday, would you respond to those questions, and then after that, you make your final submission, and as we try to wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much again, Dr. Juko, and our dear viewers. I think this has been a very interesting show. I will start with the second question. I think you've helped me answer that. I may not be able to answer the question on renovation of hospitals because that's outside my mandate. But we have forums where we can share these thoughts, and I will give the feedback to those concerned.
I think Dr. Joel would have the
Maybe
orders.
Dr. Joel could directly give an answer. But of course, again, it starts with the ecosystem which I talked about. The health sector receives less than 10% of the national budget. So if you look at what is being spent on the health sector vis-a-vis the health sector requirements, again, balancing the priorities is a higher level policy issue than our level. But Dr. Dr. Joel probably will say something about that. From the Omunyora Tuoki, sparing the time for as long as Dr. Juko invites me, I stand for the truth. I can say what we are capable of doing, what we are not capable of doing. We can share in different forums. Now, you mentioned that you have cases where people have not been paid. That is what I do best. You talked of some buses. Please liaise with Dr. Juko. Let's get the details of those people. And Dr. Juko will come and tell you that those claims have been paid. If it is true that they are payable claims, I can guarantee that they will be paid for as long as we receive the necessary documentation. I think that was the issue. It was about claims payment. If it is true that they had insurance and they suffered losses and they have not been paid, please contact Dr. Juko. He will give you my personal contact. I'm able to support those people up to the end. I make that commitment. Now, at the end, again, I think this is the last time I'm speaking. I want to thank our viewers. I want to again state that, yes, there are challenges in the system. But some of the challenges are bigger than the insurance. And as rightly read from the chat room, I want to call upon you, our brothers and sisters living outside Uganda, to support us in trying to improve the environment. Because if we should not just cry, there is something that we can do to cause the change that we need. I will contact Bwana Lawrence. He has very good ideas. We can borrow from some of the ideas that you have seen, some of the things that you've seen working, so that we try, amidst the challenges that we have, we can cause some difference. Because if we wait for the change I see people saying in the new government, when is the new government going to come? Maybe it may not be during our time, but within the constraints of the environment in which we are operating, I believe that we can be pragmatic and we can do certain things. However much little the contribution will be, we shall still have made a contribution to our country, and we shall go in the history and remembered for that contribution. Otherwise, I thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. Juko, and I greet my brothers and sisters right from the capital state of Uganda.
Thank you, Mr. Sunday. As we try to send you off, we would like to inform you that here at UNN, it's a pool of professionals. And actually, we have a conference which is coming in very soon, which is of Uganda Federal Consultative Council. Actually, most of the issues to do with the policies that can help to deal with the problems in Uganda are going to be discussed. So in that regard, if you can be able to, participate in that conference, the email address is ufcc@getunn.com. That is where we shall have to discuss a lot of policies in different areas of of operation in the country, and we shall always try to develop policies, even insurance policy itself. We shall have to discuss it, and then I think we shall have to consult the IRA as well to give us their expertise in this regard. Thank you very much, Mr. Sunday, and we really appreciate your time with us here, and we hope we shall bring you another time, and possibly another time you will be with Lawrence, and then you try to give you a good time and you give out exactly what insurance is in Uganda. We wish you the best. Thank you very much. Let me have Lawrence to give in your last remarks and then say bye-bye to our viewers.
Okay. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Juko and all fellow panelists. Mr. Sunday, I really appreciate all the views and the work you do, at least to better the industry, given the times we are dealing with and the challenges we have. So in my conclusion, just going back to where we started and where we are right now, I believe this is a journey we can take. We just have to take it. We have to have a policy or a program that is actually going to be beneficial to all Ugandans. And we don't have to start from scratch. Just like we've leapfrogged and actually jumped so many phases that other places have gone through to achieve this kind of status or position in the world, being superpowers. We don't have to go through all the 3 decades of what they've gone through. If what they have right now works, we can agree to just try to streamline it and personalize it to our setup, and get a policy that will be beneficial to everyone. And just not forgetting what insurance is for, or what insurance is fundamentally. Primarily, it is just to save life. Save life. You plan for everything. I see us doing all these other things. We put all the money in the guns, all the roads. I don't know which other schemes there. And of course, there have been some failed schemes, as you know. People have their reservations on funds like the NSSF. They're like, what if insurance comes in and it's almost the same thing? But we can avoid that. If we have people in, the right people in, who go by the law and by the programs and whatever is stipulated, and we are willing to learn from those who are better than us, I think we can totally have a national insurance program or scheme like the one you have that actually works. And I think people won't have to travel to India to get all these treatment and surgeries that we go out flying. I don't see why the first family should fly to whichever places to have their kids or ministers. As I just heard, the Speaker of Parliament has just landed back in Uganda just over COVID. And COVID is something that even people sometimes are able to treat in their own homes. But if even that, you're expending all this money to take people out there. If the insurance and healthcare got together and worked out a plan that works for everyone. Of course, the parliamentarian, I mean, you remember Parliament, you get 20, 30, I don't know how many millions per month. We expect more from you in premiums. And if you don't make that much, the nation can always find a way of subsidizing you and according you some benefits. So I strongly believe this is not a lost battle. For some of us who have witnessed insurance play out in some people's lives in a very remarkable way, I am very optimistic that we can make this work, and there's no reason why we can't move forward. Maliriza nga mwenna mbebaza okubeera ku show. Webale nnyo Dr. Juko okuteeka program eno. Obudde tebubadde bungi, bye mbadde nabyo bibadde bingi. Presentation ngisharinze tusobola okugitambuza. You share it and then we can always pick something from this. Netulaba engeri etweyamba ffenna. I think we can make this work and move the nation forward.
It was really pleasure, Lawrence, and I think we're very, very, happy for your contribution, and we of course look forward to bringing you back over other issues. And I wonder whether Dr. Servanja is still with us, and if he is, then I wanted Desire to come last. So let me have Desire finally as you wind up and we get out of this place. Yes, Desire.
Thank you to all the panelists and everyone who's been here to discuss this. And again, as we wrap up, is I want to refer everyone like everyone to, we've talked about countries like the States and Canada and their insurance policies and healthcare policies. But as citizens of Uganda, we should actually we should look at a bigger arena, because we do not, why is it that African countries, we always find ourselves in this position where it's copy, and we've always talked about this, we just copy and paste what the West does. But I have also stories and experiences where health insurance has not helped out, because here to have a health insurance, as said, one of it is always your income, citizenry. So there's a lot of loopholes. And this is not to say that if installed health insurance in Uganda would look that way. But I would advise everyone to go and look at one system of health insurance, one health insurance national system that is not talked about a lot but should be talked about, is the healthcare system in Cuba. The healthcare system in Cuba is so good that anytime there is, even during coronavirus, it was Cuban doctors that were getting flown to different countries to help those countries. So, what is it that Cuba did differently to have a healthcare system whereby even in the most remote places in Cuba, there is a doctor there? For example, in Uganda, I would use, imagine having 5 doctors on Kalangala and they know their patient's history, they have access to medicine. That is what they have in Cuba. And insurance is not going to guarantee that scenery. So, and again, this goes out to people who have studied in this field and have this knowledge. Until we start applying this knowledge to the problems of the nation instead of separate industry, we end up in the same system we're in with Museveni, whereby people came in with knowledge of certain industries and then they tried to make those industries grow. They invested money in those industries. And now look at our agriculture sector. Look at our fishing industry. Until we start looking at nation problems instead of industry problems and start approaching our problems at a national based place, we will not get the results we want. Because getting insurance, that is working within the lines of insurance and the law, both things that come from our colonial parents. But how about we start to approach this from actually what does the nation need and what does the government put in place, both the state and the national government need to do to make healthcare accessible. And there's examples of countries that have done it. Go look at Cuba's healthcare system. So I will rest my case with that, and rest my case with Cuba made sure it educates doctors, it allocates doctors, and it provides resources for doctors. And for that reason, they have one of the world's strongest healthcare system. And yeah, it shows, although it's not heavily mediatized. So let's look at other examples to help our healthcare system. And we have the resources. Our people are enough. So I'll rest my case on that. Neanzizanyo for today, for the panel, for the issues we've come across and discussed. And
Thank you very much. I like the Uganda part of our guests, and I hope we shall have another time. Viewers, we cannot go beyond this because always time is our best enemy. And we here to again tell you that as the discussion continues, we are looking forward to your other views because we always view this platform later on as we try to look at what you people have contributed in your comment in your comments. We always respond and try to write down, which we always send back to the guests that have been here, and then we try to find the best out of our discussion. Viewers, don't forget that we are still calling upon every Ugandan to come on board with the Uganda Federal Consultative Council so that we can discuss all these policies, bring them and put them together. And as we go to a better Uganda, we will be able to have all this done without fear or favor. Our esteemed viewers, as I always mention, Uganda is for every one of us, and we need everyone's contribution. We cannot do the best Uganda if we are doing it by ourselves or one as a person. We need everyone's contribution. Your contribution is very important, and I hope your participation in the Federal Consultative Council will be a very great contribution to your country. I wouldn't go beyond this. I just tell you that after this, we have another show which is coming in, which principal is ready to give you more of the insights that are happening in Uganda. I wish to also thank our producer, principal, and Dr. Samson for their good work they have done, and we hope things will go the best out of the best. And we can't go beyond this. Just wish you the best, viewers, and the coming next is this and that, as usually after my show on Sunday. God bless you and wish you a happy new month of August and a lovely weekend and possibly a new successful week that starts tonight. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. See you then on Sunday once again as we try to discuss another issue. Thank you very much. Bye.